Analytics Rebel Alliance is counting on you. Like, subscribe, leave a comment down below, turn on that alarm bell so you don't miss any future mission. Fantastic. All right. Well, thank you, everyone. I have chat up here. I'm gonna go ahead and get started on this because I got a lot of content to get going on. I know it's a little early. Thank you guys all for coming to stop by and see me. You're probably asking yourself, who the heck is this guy? My name is Chris Wagner. I'm an analytics architect for Rockwell Automation. I provide high-level architectural overview to 30,000 Power BI developers, 1,400 real like modelers and people who create experiences that they share for analysts, 300 people who provide business unit level reports that get distributed, and then I provide detailed technical information on to and guidance and oversight for 30 or so analytics engineers. I'm also the founder of KratosBI.com. Head over to KratosBI.com. Check out all the data gods that are out there. Frankly, I started the website because, for the longest time, people called me like a data ninja, a magician, just like they called me up for doing all these fantastical things for working with data. And I said, the reality was, like, I do stuff, but I learned from all these other data gods, right? There's all these people that are truly impressive. You got to check them out. And instead of sending individual pages all the time, I put together a website. So do check it out. I am also a Microsoft Data Platform MVP. So I work with Microsoft tooling for a long time. My story and journey there was, I think it was about 10 years ago now, or maybe even 15. I was working on a full-on Oracle platform, stood it up, scoped it out, needed an upgrade. It was like $2.8 million. I only got approved for it was 4.8. I got approved for 2.4. I forget what it was. It's a lot of money. Stood it all out, rolled it all out. Super happy. It was awesome. Great data warehouse and BI platform. But I only got to do half of what I wanted because it was too expensive. Like, no more than like a month after we rolled it out, I saw this new demo of MSBI, and I realized the whole thing was everything I wanted. That huge $4 million solution or whatever was all inside of MSBI, and so I completely abandoned Oracle, switched over to the MSBI space. Nearly, completely, like literally the next day I started applying for jobs. Started to work inside the space, was having great success with the MSBI stuff, but was also doing stuff in Tableau at the time because, at the time Tableau was king. But Tableau had some weaknesses on distribution, sharing, and management that I was kind of struggling with, as well as like self-exploration. The story wasn't quite there. And then we start to see this explosion of what was going on inside of MSBI, and specifically the Power Query and Power View integrations inside of Excel. And so, I just switched right on over. I'm also the Narrative Sciences Analytics Rebel of the Year. So I've kind of been banging heads with some of the bigger people and bigger areas in the space to make sure that we're driving home all sorts of different types of analytics. And that has yielded the win for myself and Rockwell Automation to be the Future Award 50 winner for how we have integrated our solution into our customer service experience, bringing in all sorts of real-time analytics, cache analytics, AI integration into our solution, all inside of one pane of glass, and that's what got us the win. Please do follow me on YouTube, LinkedIn, Twitter, and go out to KratosBI.com. Check out the content that I have out there. Almost everything you see today will be available on that website, so there's a lot of stuff for you to go out and check out, so do check that out. But the question is, who are all of the data gods? What are they? What is this? And as I said, these are all the people that helped me do the things that I did. While I contribute in some small ways, these are the people that I learned from, that have, taught me, and that I turn to on really a daily basis. Because if Google has taught us anything, knowing something is not nearly as important as knowing how to get to something. That's that's why I created this website, Kratos BI, is to connect you with all of the incredible people that are working inside that space. And some of the people have been working for like a long time, like your Chris Webbs, your Adam Saxtons. But there's new people that are up and running inside the space as well, and I try to feature them and highlight them, because frankly, that new lifeblood that comes into the area really brings in great new ideas, concepts, and frankly, that's also why I put together this presentation, because I think you have something important to say, and I not only do I want to hear what you have to say, I want the world to hear what you have to say. All right. So the question is, that we're framing up, that we're talking about today, is how do you go from like a newborn babe inside the data space to that, like, to transcend data and move yourself to that data god plane, right? How do you make that journey? What's that process? And I am glad you asked, and I'm glad every single one of you are here so that we can start to get into that. All right. We're gonna jump in. So really what we're talking about is, there's many different areas. This is my take when it comes to looking at how you start on your journey, because you need to know some of all of these things to get up and running inside of the data space, working with Power BI, and starting to share information out. And it's not just Power BI, but it's working with data in general, right? And understanding all of these things is important. And I do recommend that you start with the end in mind, right? Data for data's sake is, in theory, it has value, but the reality is you can pile up a whole massive amount of data, and if it's not usable, accessible, or consumable by anyone, it doesn't bring in a lot of value, right? So think about that end state in mind. Start with your idea of, how do I take this data and make it accessible to people? And straight up, the fastest way to do that is through a report. So as we start to think about, what does it take to do that, we really think about, like, how do we bring all that data together? How do we gather it from whatever sources that are out there, bring it together? Then how do we model it, get it into a place that we can do something with, even if it's just a big grid? But how do we do something with it? Then how do we make it into a report that's actionable, usable, accessible to people, and then visually accessible, and consumable, right? That's what we're talking about there. But then how do we deploy it? How do we share it? How do we get it from you as an analyst out into people's hands, right? That piece is incredibly important. I know there are data and BI guys out there who, if you're anything like me, you go whole hog into creating Power BI reports, and like, it's just, frankly, it's so easy to make a few thousand reports over there. But if you don't get it out into people's hands and they can't consume it and use it, what are we doing, right? Again, yeah, great comments in chat. Start with the end in mind. And if you're not reaching that end, if it's not being consumed by people, take a step back, slow down, make sure that it's understandable, right? Get that start to build out that muscle. It's super important, and it's what will influence this entire thing, right? Like, how you consume and how people work with that stuff is going to influence that report, which is going to influence the model, which is going to influence the data that you bring back in, and how you shape it, right? All of this stuff is super important, right? Now, once you've kind of taken your first swag through that, let's talk about how you really talk about, going in and starting to analyze inside of Power BI. This really starts to get into building out DAX and building out measures to start to do some, initial things, right? Like your first report, nobody realized what a measure is, right? And I totally get that. You don't know, right? And it's not straightforward. It's not clear that you have to, because frankly, like in Power BI, it's super easy to just build a report without ever learning it. But learn what a measure is, right? Learn If you create a measure, though, you have to validate that the results are correct. And not just the results one time, right? Like, hey, what's the sum of total revenue? And that number generically is right. Hey, that's awesome. But make sure that it also is right across any of your dimensions or measure or dimensions inside your model. And so as you're breaking it up, as you're going in there, that you could tell that it's accurate as you go, because the tabular engine and a star schema doesn't necessarily work the way some people think it's going to work. And people should be aware of that, right? If you spend all of your time working with SQL and you just jump right in, you're going to find some little things are a little different. So make sure that as you're building out and you're starting to go down this path, that you take a little time to validate what's happening. And then when it doesn't line up, find out why. Right? Go in, look at research, read up on your DAX patterns and your star schema. These are going to be your 2 books that you'll start with. Get those up and running so that you can understand what's happening there. Then once you have those in place and you start to build out, what do you mean by data quality? Start to put those into a data quality report that you can start putting alerts on. You can start to monitor and understand the health of your of what's going on inside of your ecosystem, right? And then please, 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 if you have not tried out the goal experience inside of Power BI, give that a shot. That is also really good when it comes to some interesting metrics and snapshotting around metadata, right? Like your load date time, keeping that below a certain point, or charting some other things out. I think you can build out some incredible experiences just around data quality with the goals, even if it's not your typical business goals. But start looking at the goals experience. All right. Next, when we start to get in, is start to think about the design of your reports, right? And when I say design, the reason we go into reports and we want to provide data to people is not for us. It's not for the analysts. It's not for the people who love data. It's for the business users who want to come in, have insights given to us, and then take action upon them, right? Like, we don't want to just start looking through huge grids of data that's meaningless. We want to create experiences that allows to elevate up what's going on inside of any given report, right? At the same time, we don't want to ignore the need for details in some situations, right? So as you're building this out, as you're shaping that, make sure that you have a good UI. So as users come in, they understand that it's interactable, that it's usable, and that you begin to start to tell a story where you have clear actors and you clearly start to define out what are your heroes and what are your villains inside of every experience. And the reality is, the heroes and villains aren't going to be dimensions. They're going to be actions, right? Sales is, in general, isn't a hero or villain, but sales broken out by a dimension over time can be. You can see some will be good, some will be bad. Start to put that into your story that you're building out and create a visual experience that starts to bring that up and show to people. All right. Now, you also inside this space also have to start thinking about how are you managing your environment, right? As I said before, super easy to go out and create thousands upon thousands of Power BI reports, but if only 2 are being used, you know how many you need? Let's maybe 3, a few new ones coming along, but you don't need thousands of Power BI reports. You need the ones that are actually getting people up and running and that they're using. That's going to require you to make sure that you've got them refreshing. They're accurate. They're up to date. They've been locked down. That you have the appropriate security and sharing around them. You have a workspace strategy around, or you have a workspaces that you're using to consume, and that you have a overall strategy for your environment. Okay. These are all of the things that you have to kind of start to understand and think about when it comes to how do I start to work with data and become that data god. once you kind of go through these, right, you understand how these things work, you're going to find places where you'll be different than everyone else, where some will start to like speak out to you, right? Where you want to like grow and you'll naturally gravitate to that. And I am all about people gravitating to what they enjoy, what they like the absolute most. Because this is where you're going to find it's easiest for you to commit, get into, and just find, time will just start to fly right by. Okay. So if you find yourself all in on reporting or all in on modeling or alerting or goals or whatever it happens to be, go all in, right? The more you can start to build out in those areas, the better. Do recommend, don't just go in at one layer. Try to manage and start to address multiple layers inside of your strategy so you can be purposeful in how you work and operate. And then as you reach different levels of achievement, then start to build out in other areas, right? So that you can have that well-rounded experience when it comes to working with data and what. And then as you continue to go, look for how you can evolve not just the content that you do and not just the stuff that you love and that you're strong in and that you've started to grow in, but start to look at areas where you can start to really evolve and change the way people are looking at the data, right? Start to add in streaming, start to bring that real-time IoT data out to your users, out to the people who are consuming your information. Become that Power BI artiste, right? Create wonderful palettes that people can use and consume and work with, or figure out what is that advanced support model going to be like. And I'm not necessarily even just talking about supporting your end users when they call in and say, "Hey, there's 20,000 Power BI reports that exist. I can't get access to this one. Help me," right? That's one support experience. How do you start to support out analysts? How do you support out other data modelers? How do you support other BI teams potentially inside your organization, right? Maybe you have defined the perfect customer dimension. Well, don't be greedy. Share it. Create a data flow. Create a data flow that you put in a data flow workspace, and then you share that out, right? Begin to build that data governance model around how you share out and share your knowledge and wisdom with people, right? Create those good dimensions, create those good facts, put those in environments that allow them to easily share, consume, right? Um, Look at how you scale, not just like I said to scaling from one developer, but scaling to BI orgs, or maybe you look at scaling to like large parts of your enterprise. Lots of BI developers start working, we do work inside data, and we're focused in on ourselves or the work we're doing. It starts to expand to a team and then a division and then an entire enterprise. What does that mean? There's a lot that goes into scaling a report out to the enterprise, right? The row level security you have to get into starts to become incredibly complex. Your strategies for deployment management of your reports, all sorts of things go in there. Um, or look in other areas like your community. How do you build out that data culture so that it's well understood how people can work with data, how they can start to engage and learn more about these, right? But you start to focus in on the areas that naturally align with what you want to do and what is most important to your organization. Each of these paths are going to be different for every single one of us, and it's going to be driven by what goes on inside of the companies that we work at. Now, as you continue to go inside this space, you're focus in on purposefully mastering these topics. Don't just continue doing the same old, same old. Read the blogs, read work from other people, attend these sessions. I mean, everyone here is attending these sessions, but for anyone watching a recording, like, make sure you're participating in this stuff and look at how you're expanding your mind and challenging your previous assumptions, right? I had an interesting conversation yesterday with Alex Powers about Power Query. I'm trying to challenge some assumptions there, right? And that's something that you need to be doing. Is you need to be looking at how we challenge and work with the data and the environment around us. That's going to be one of the big things when it comes to how do you gain mastery. And don't be afraid to put out an idea and be wrong. It's fine. You're never going to bring about a true change to the environment or a true change to the world if you don't risk being wrong and breaking away from the norms that are out there. And that is a key part in your journey towards mastery, okay? And then once you start to get to that level, it becomes increasingly important that you start sharing your knowledge, sharing what you do, and getting out there and speaking at these conferences. Get out there, make some YouTube videos, write a blog, publish out on Git, mentor someone, right? Find that individual who's out there just clamoring to start working in data and likes what you're doing. Help them get started, right? Like, I know there were several people that took big risks and gambles on me in my career. Make those gambles on people around you, right? Help them become successful and really be there to help them on their career journey. Making sure that you focus in on what they want to do. Again, back to what I said up on top. Understanding what the individual wants is going to be the most important thing. And then figure out how you can broadly support not just yourself, not just your company, not just the people around you, but support people in the community. Start with data, but extend yourself out into how can you support people, right? We're all here. We all have our own personal journeys that we're all going on. We all have different struggles and issues that we have. Understanding that it's not about you and that it's about them is one of the biggest pieces of making that journey from I want to better at my job to I am going to make the world better when it comes to data, when it comes to how I interact, how I work. All right. These are the big key concepts that I think about when I look at all of the people that have risen to that data space as they've gone on that journey. They've worked hard in their careers in making these things happen, and then they really start to turn around and make things available for people. But this is not just me talking. I got a demo. All right, who's ready? Here we go. All right. Here we are. Let's do this. Let's go. All right. Okay. So when it comes to getting up and running and building out a data experience and data guides, you have to understand what you're doing inside your space. All right. So buckle up. This is going to go fast. All right. Now, when we talk about getting up and running inside data, working with data, especially Power BI, you need to understand the specs and requirements of the system that you're working on. All right. When you install Power BI Desktop, you're going to be installing not just the desktop, but SQL Server Tabular Engine gets installed on your system. It'll be updated at least once a month if you install it through the Windows Store, and you should install it through the Windows Store. But you need to have the fastest processors that you could possibly have. You want to make sure that you, at a minimum, have 16 gigabytes of free memory to do your development. 32 gigabytes is better. 64 is even better. 128 is amazing. If you're working in Power BI Pro and you're just sharing with other Power BI Pro people, 16 gigabytes will pretty much be good enough for you to do the development. If you're working in a P1 environment, you really need to get to 32 gigs of memory so you can have up to a 25 gig model that you have on your system and you can do your refreshing on. All right. If you're going more than a P1 and you're going to be going to larger models that go to 50 or 100 gigabytes, then you really need to make sure that not only do you look at having 32 to 64 plus gigs of memory available, that you start to add in building out and using Tabular Editor for using your models. Tabular Editor 2 is free. Tabular Editor 3 is awesome, costs some money. But frankly, this analytics compute engines are the most expensive things that your company will invest in. Having the proper tools to do your builds is super important. All right. Now, as I said, understanding this is going to be really important. Okay. That's your system. Now, when you talk about getting, so that's your PC getting all set up. Now, when you talk about going out into the system and getting it up and ready, you or your admins need to make sure you have certain things that are set up. And these are set up under settings. You go into the admin portal, and I want to make sure that you get the help and support settings available inside the tooling. This will be off by default. You should not have this off. You should point this to internal documentation if you have it, as well as discussion forums. So this could be your Slack channels, your team channels, your Yammer sites, whatever it is that you have inside your company to communicate this out. You should be filling these things out. If not, make sure you're pointing people to Microsoft Learn and provide instructions to them on the side about how they can use Learn resources. All right. Worst case scenario, you point to the discussion forums. All right. Next thing you need to make sure that you've turned off your external sharing options. Allowing guest users in and guest users onto your platform. This is exceedingly dangerous. You become reliant upon your O365 team to control that in and out. Only turn these on if you have specific controls in place around this. I have this enabled because I have garbage in my tenant that you're seeing right here. You do not have garbage in your tenant. You have proprietary information and data that you do not want to share out. Make sure you get these things set up, all right? Also, make sure you turn on your XMLA endpoints and analyze in Excel for on-prem datasets. Very important to get these things up and running for people to start using the information broadly across your platform. Next, when it comes to Power BI Premium, upgrade to Gen 2. There's a no-brainer. Check out my YouTube video. It's going to be important. You need to have Gen 2 up and running. It's going to be also important that you turn on these notifications so you can see when scale is occurring, when you can see what's happening, and you get alerts for what's going on inside the system. Here's where you can manage auto scale. Caution, if you're overloaded, and many people are overloaded, you turn this on, it'll just automatically tick up to however many cores that you allow for. This is something that you should not be doing just like generically, like have this scale up, because if you run two additional cores the entire month, you're paying for an entire upgrade to the next, doubling your performance. So make sure you have a good strategy around that. Okay. Now, next thing, as part of your management of your premium tenant, go out and install the capacity metrics app. It's available on the service, or it's an app you install. You have to configure it inside your organization. Get in, understand how this works. Spend some time in here. You'll see highlights, lowlights. You'll see where you have performance issues. You'll see where you have content that's up and running. Okay. Now, next thing you want to do, make sure you've set up your organizational visuals. Key ones I want you to make sure that you include: bullet chart, chiclet slicer, power KPI, and the Sankey chart. These are the four most important slicers inside your organization. If you don't know why, check out my other videos. If you're lucky that you can afford some and you get access to paid for subscriptions, this is where you can download and share these custom visuals broadly across your organization. If you share it that way, all of these visuals appear automatically inside of people's Power BI report panes. So it's super important to help all your developers inside your organization get this set up right. All right. Next thing we want to do is we want to talk about making sure your Power BI environment has custom branding for your organization. So you're not just using the generic stuff out there, because we want to be data gods. We want all our stuff to look top notch, right? So you can go in here, put in your logo, put in your background, and add a theme color. I have done this for my Power BI space. You can go out and see that it is easily accessible and available there. And then last but definitively not least, when it comes to our service and setting up our service so it's working right, is make sure you have defined a workspace strategy for how you're going to share content out. Start with understanding your consumption patterns. These are going to be reports, data sets, data flows are going to be the biggest ones you're going to do your breakout. But when it comes to consumption, you're going to be talking about internal, external, or internal and external reports. And then you're going to distribute them via apps for your internal. External, you're going to have to make some changes on your deployment models, making sure that you don't separate out your data sets. Data sets have to go inside the workspaces for any external things. All right. Then you're also going to start to take into account, are you using pro developers, premium per user developers, and premium, or what mix? That will all go into figuring out how you break this up. I'm not going to go into a great deal of detail on this. Melissa Coates has an excellent summary here. I'm going to post this inside of chat because this is how you will start to organize a metric ton of content. All right. This will have your Power BI Premium service up and running. So now we have your desktop up and running. This would be true for all of your developers will need that. We have your service up and running. All your developers knew that you have that up and running. And then it's here you go. Then you set up your Teams integration, right? You set up Power BI to be right inside of Teams, so you can just go right in, and everyone goes into Teams and they start on the home page, but you have Power BI right there, so it's really easy for people to go straight in and access their data. They can go in and work in this space. Do point out when you do so that there's this little globe icon up here. There's a handful of features and functions that don't exist inside of Power BI embedded inside Teams that you need to go out to the globe. So you just click on the globe, it pops up, takes you up into the new Power BI or your Power BI experience. All right. So next, we want to make sure that we have wait. Oh, okay. All right. So we have Teams integration. Next is our where does our data go? All right. Now, if you're just doing ad hoc development and you're in a smaller company, that's awesome. That's great. Come up with what your data consumption strategy is, especially if it's if you're just dumping a whole bunch of files out there and you're using CSVs and Excel and whatnot to send stuff around. Use OneDrive, use SharePoint, or any place where you can browse to and accept and access those files on the web is super important. The reason you want to do this and you do not want to use your C drive, don't use your C drive. Stop referring to reports or data sources on your C drive, because once you get it out on the web, then you can set up refreshes and you're going to be golden. If you have files that are on your C drive, even if you're connected out to your enterprise stuff, your refreshes aren't going to work. So set up a data folder, separate out data sources on that data folder. So, okay, so here's my folder and I've got, I don't know, Dynamics, SharePoint, Salesforce, wherever. I've got all my email files, right? Set it out into OneDrive, put it there. You can easily then create little Power Automate scripts to watch your email for certain subject lines and save files out into that folder, thus making yourself having like an entire integrated experience, okay? But this is really only for companies that have an ad hoc. Honestly, you should be looking at a bare minimum, if you don't have a data warehouse that you have accessible to you, start with here we go. Start with working inside of a data mart. Why are you? Start with working inside of a data mart. AdventureWorks is a great example. Big keys that you want to start doing and being very careful and conscientious around is making sure that you have consistent surrogate keys in place that you're able to use as part of your loading process so that you can account for late arriving data, and that you're so information that comes in from whatever source it is, if it's feeding into a fact table, you don't have to wait for a potential dimension or a full dimension to load. All right. When you have that done, make sure you have clearly defined DIMs and fact tables, but never ever use DIM and fact tables inside of your views, or I'm sorry, inside of your Power BI reports. Only use views in place. And when you do use views, I want you to make sure that you're using no lock on all of your joins inside or in all of your views, to make sure that you never have a locking situation. So any of your Power BI reports, when they're hitting your backend data mart, they're hitting views with no lock, so you don't have to worry about multiple things up and running against each other, and you never have conflicts in place on your views. All right. And then do not forget the need for the so DIMs. DIMs are your dimensional tables. I'm not going to go too deep into that. You guys know what DIMs and facts are, I presume. But do not forget the potential need for the OBT. Down with OBT, yeah, so OBT is one big table. Now, in this case, I'm using a view to create that one big table. You may want to look at having a separate process that creates the one big table upon load. That will increase your performance of loads when people are accessing it on a regular basis, especially if this is very large and time consuming, and that calculate engine running broadly across your tables is expensive on that read, and you want it to be faster when people interact with this. This is not true for the tabular engine, but it is true for SSRs, or I'm sorry, for paginated reports. If paginated reports are hitting this, you might want to have that one big table experience, all right? And then the last thing you also want to make sure inside of here is that you create a read service account. The read service account with the password that doesn't expire will be used to configure all your gateways that access your database server. Now, a gateway is only necessary if this is up and running inside or on a VM or inside of your system. But if it is, or if it's in Azure, if it's a like Azure SQL, you don't need a gateway. But if you need a gateway, because most people are running a hybrid cloud, you're going to need to install one or two types of gateways. One is personal. Personal is all right in small situations. You have a huge problem in your transition to support and the longevity of any solutions out there. If you're installing your personal gateway, that means things can only refresh when you're around. Far better to create a VM out in Azure or out on wherever your database is. Install the gateway that allows for the connectivity that goes into it. And the enterprise gateway for use by many different people. You do want to have that VM geographically located as close to that database as you have. So either if you're talking truly on-prem, install the gateway on a server on-prem. If you're talking in the cloud, make sure it's in the same region, that type of a thing. Okay. While some people put the gateway and the database server on the same server, I highly recommend that you split those out, because the activities that go on the database can really negatively impact the gateway, and the activities that go on the gateway, it's entirely possible to really screw up your database. So make sure you balance those out. And if you're starting to have load issues or performance issues when it comes to data moving out and through your gateway, look at having load balancing in place, so that you have one, two, or even three servers that are trying to process the loads that go through the database. That can really help you. Or segment out your loads, so you have some loads running on one gateway server and some loads running on another. A big word of caution: make sure that you record the key that is generated when you create the gateway. It's critical that you have that to restore that gateway when you need to replace that server. I guarantee you, no matter how assured you are that you're running on the latest, greatest server today, tomorrow, or be that a day from now, a year from now, or 5 years from now, 10 years from now, you're going to need to rebuild that server. Having that key is critical to setting it up so that it syncs directly into the cloud, maintaining all of the connections that you've configured in the cloud. Without that key, 5 years from now, you are in deep doo-doo. All right. Don't be in deep doo-doo. All right. Next thing, once that's in place, you're going to go out and you are going to go into the service, and you're going to register your data sources that you're using in to build out your reports. Okay. Now, the first one you're going to create is to your data mart using that read service principle that we talked about. You're going to define that server. You're going to define the server in the gateway. So you're going to first come out here, define what all the names and stuff on it. You're going to test it out, and then do not forget to assign who's allowed to use the gateway, right? And while in my organization there's just two of us, it's me and the PowerBi Luchador. That's the extent of my company at this point in time. That's not forever going to be the case. In most places, you have more than two users. And I don't care if you have 10 users, you will have turnover, and you want to make sure you're giving people access broadly to the system to do the jobs that they need. Use Active Directory groups to do this, so that you can have that, whatever resource you're using for accessing that data, if you want them to use the gateways, it's that same resource, so that it makes it super easy for you to manage, and you're not trying to remember like, oh yeah, I got to add them to the database, and then I got to add them to the gateway, and then stop that. Create an AD group for the sharing and the access. All right. This is super important that you make sure you hit on those items. All right. Okay. So that's a service. We've set up our services. So we've got our desktop, we've got our Power BI service, we've got our gateway set up that connected them together. We've got our data mart all up and running. Now, this is more work than I'm just going through here, but these are the things that you get started with, okay? Then the next thing I want you to get started doing and looking at creating is your Power BI theme file. This can be something that's super basic that you just go out and start to put together. From within the service, you can go out. Where's my blankest of? Oh, so you here. You can go right out into the service with a blank report and start to go in under View in here, and you can start to either create a theme inside of here, so you can do customize your current theme. Once you customize your current theme, you can go in and export it, and then you have a standard theme that's accessible for people, okay? Do that. Then I want you to go in and create a PowerPoint to help you build out backgrounds. These backgrounds are super important in creating a good customer experience and story, as well as making sure that it's really easy for you, even when you're doing like ad hoc reporting, you throw in a theme and you throw on a background to make it look great. There is no more permanent of a technology solution than the solution that's supposed to just last for 5 minutes. So I guarantee you, if you are taking the time to build a Power BI report, take the 30 seconds that it's going to take to add in a theme and add in a background, okay? Especially if you have these materials already created, it's super easy to do that. So prep this, get this ready so it's easy for you to create and get up and running, okay? And then once you get that up and running, I want you to go in and I want you to create, where'd it go? I want you to create either through using the Kratos BI seed file, go out and create an experience that gives users and your builders a good navigation in place, so it's easy for them to get in and start to work with the different items that are in there. Now, there are no bookmarks in this, but you can start to build out integrations, actions, so that people can understand how these things work and operate together, and tell the appropriate story, so that you have a common UI experience, and it becomes easy for new developers to come in and start to build out content that aligns with what you're looking for as part of your company and part of the work that you're doing. All right. Now, that's Power BI, but this is an entire business intelligence landscape. It's not just Power BI. It's not just data. That's why you also want to make sure that you have an Excel seed available for people. This will be one of the biggest things that you use, especially as you get up and running and get started, because this will allow you to do all sorts of more classical integrations and tests when it comes to your data, as well as integrating back to your source system on models that you've created. All right. So out on KratosBI.com, I've got the seed file out here. It's got many years of experience building this out. Take it, use it for your utilization, but do have. You want to make sure that you're hitting on all of these things, like having that index navigation in place so you can direct users through it. No one likes having a 100 tab Excel workbook with no ability to navigate. Have all of that, include an index, so that you jump right back to that inbox every time. Have a sandbox that connects back to the data set that's in question. That becomes easy for people to go in and start to explore and play with information. This sandbox that's connected to your Power BI dataset is one of the most powerful tools around for business users to start to explore and work with data. All right. I have seen users take this and sit down and on a weekend start to troll through what's going on inside their business and identify multi-million-dollar opportunities that change the course of that business forever because of this. All right. This is key to the success of your entire platform and driving that ROI. Make sure you have this. All right. Along with this, make sure you're including time to include what are the definitions of these things and put it right inside that notebook so people understand what they're looking at and what they're working with. Even if it's just a link to Purview or Calibra or wherever you have your official documentation, put this in here so you can get this up and running. All right. Now, this also includes like a walkthrough, like how do you use this, right? Remember, no one is as smart as you, right? You are the smartest person you know. You're the smartest person I know. Help people out, right? Help people when they encounter something, get to that next space, right? So use this to help them out. Use this to balance out your data sets and validate that the information is right. Frankly, one of the big projects I'm working on is exploding this out to have thousands of these things in my place or in my environment so I can ensure that the quality of the data that's going into my models is as solid as it can be so that we can identify any of the 6 different dimensions of data quality, and we can start to put tests around that, and we can keep a very tight and close eye on that. Having solid data integrity is vital. This can allow you to do that real easily so you can be monitoring all of your data sets, balancing out to sorts, checking for integrity, having that all in one place. If you're doing this and you're updating, these sheets on a regular basis, you're going to want to make sure you're communicating to people as to what updates are going on inside there. So it's not a question like, hey, what else has changed in this since the last time I was in? Make sure you have that. Add in any and all branding information that you have in place here so that it makes it easy as people are starting to build out and create those Excel dashboards inside of Excel, that they can do this in here. This will make it super easy when they publish it out into the Excel service, and the Power BI data sets in Excel start to just interact and work together all inside of one. You have it there. You've got officially branded stuff. You're good to go. Anything that you include inside here, make sure you include commentary around any of the additional administrative activities that go on in here. I know some of you are going to abuse this, or some of the people that are around will abuse it, and they'll do everything here and it'll become this whole manual mishmash. Okay, I understand you might build out a whole manual mishmash, and that's fine. We all have jobs to do, right? We all have things that don't necessarily rise up to like having full-on CI/CD pipelines with, offshore, onshore, 24/7 support in place to support a solution. Get it? Cool. But if you have all sorts of manual processes and options that you need to do, document it. Put it right there in the spreadsheet so when people go in and that person, that lucky SOB who comes along after you and has to support and build this stuff out, they've got some instructions in place on how to do that. They've got like, why does this even exist, right? Get that out there, include that. Also include something around just a blank template file. So if you have a specific format that you're using all of the time, include that in here so that people can, rapidly add stuff out and grow that, and there's no issues. As well as documenting any queries that are used inside of here. Please note, do not put username and password in Excel files. Horrible way to solve that. You're going to run into all sorts of problems if you do that. So do not do that. But include what is it you're connecting to? Why are you connecting? What's the ID that you're to connect? Query notes, that type of a thing. All right. Get that up, get that ready. Include both of these inside your toolkit so when you get started up and running, you're good to go. All right. Now we've got our foundational pieces in place. Let's talk about the next level. Now we start to talk about what does it mean to build out our centralized data sets. I'm calling this one my data god model because inside of here, I am properly doing all of the things that I preach. I've got all my facts. I've got all my dimensions. I'm sourcing from views. I've got everything that's not in use hidden. I'm not using things that I shouldn't be using. I've got summations on things. I've got complex statements. Complex. I don't have complex. Wait, I do. Here. Yes. I've got complex statements in place so I can use this out as demos for people to go in and get this up and running, and so people can see examples of how each of these things can go. I build on this, I add to this, so as I'm working on something, as I take a difficult piece of code, I work it, put it in production, I also put in my sample data set so people can learn and grow from this. All right, make sure that this is out there. Include things, come on, server now. Include things like zoom out. Specific tabs in your model that go in and highlight certain features, right? Like, so inside of here, this is my employee view. When I talk about an employee, these are the dimensions, measures, and facts that are important to it. This is my internet sales view. This is what's relevant to internet sales. This is my employee reseller report. These are the pieces and components that go into that. Here are reseller sales and how we interact and work with that, right? So create these views inside your model. And while you can manage your model with Tabular Editor, actually, skip that. Create this PBX file that documents these things and has these pieces out there so it becomes easy for people that are going in and starting to understand and work with this. Now, once you have that stuff in place and your model starts to get a bit crazy, right? Like, I'm going to admit, this probably isn't as straightforward as it could be, right? It's probably a little more complex than, some models that are out there. That's when I want you to start looking at taking Tabular Editor and starting to manage your code inside of here. All right. Now, if you have Tabular Editor already installed in your system, you're going to see that it pops up by using external tools. When you fire that up and open this up, you'll be connected directly to that model. What this allows you to do is go into your Power BI workspace, data sets and data flows. You can go into settings and premium. You can access it by copying it here. And then when it comes to your model, you can deploy this out onto the service. That means you no longer have to worry about managing your model inside of a PBIX file and getting this lost and having all sorts of issues. As you can see, taking a model outside of Power BI, deploying it out onto the service. Demo. This later. So all you do is do what I just did, a couple clicks, and now I've deployed my model out onto the service. Don't make me a liar. Don't make me a liar, Tabular Editor. They're like the biggest sink right there, deploying everything. Okay, so now this is deployed out into the service. We're ready to go. This becomes something that is now available for people to go out and start using. Now, when we talk about that deployed report that's out inside the service, and I want to go out to my Data God model, one of the first things I want to do is I want to go into data sets and I want to find it. And once I find it, I'm going to go out and I'm going to change up a few of the settings that are on the service to make sure that people understand that this is the data set that they should be using. First things first is I'm going to go in and I'm going to purposely put an image on this to communicate to people that this is the guy, right? This is the one I want them using, right? Then I'm going to go in and I'm going to, where did it go? Endorsement and discovery? Yeah. Make sure that it's a certified and discoverable data set for other people inside my organization to use. Now, I'm an admin on my tenant. Maybe you're not a full-on admin, so you can't necessarily certify it, but you can promote it. So you can click on promote it. So this is great if you're in let's say you're in a company with 250,000 people in it, and you've got a data set that you want your team to use. Well, you can't necessarily get it certified because you've got policies and procedures in place. And if you're a large company, you should have policies and procedures in place that define what is a certified data set. That should be part of your governance and enablement team. Talk to them about that. If you don't have that already, create a deck on that so that's out there. But at least promote it. So you've got it promoted, you've got it an image on it, and then you also want to make sure that any data credentials are in place, are set up, as well as making sure that the gateway is appropriately mapped. Okay. Once that's done, you are set to go. You can do a refresh. You can test that out, see how the refreshes are up and running. Then you'll be ready there. Now it's time for you to start to build out reports. When you go in and start building out reports, I want you to start with, of course, we're going to start with Power BI, and we're going to start to leverage the data sets that are out there. Right, so we're going to leverage that data god model that's available. We're going to build this out, making sure that it's integrated, that we use the theme that's out there, and we're going to make sure that we drop in a background to help group things together and create that usable experience for people. Okay, this is really important for people when it comes to accessing the stuff, making it accessible and usable. Please do this anytime you build a report. You have no idea how often even ad hoc reports stick around forever. So go ahead, create that report, and get that ready to publish out to the service. I'm going to go over report publishing in a second. Like many of you, people ask me all the time, but Chris, the report, those shiny reports are super nice. This is great. I really love it, but I want to get in and I want to see the details on the reports. Okay. Can you show me the details? And the answer is yes, you can do Power BI grids. You can do pivot tables, but here is where we call in the paginated bear and we bring in paginated reports. Learn it. Love it. Paginated reports are the way. These are the main mechanism that you need to learn about how we give out detailed reports inside Power BI. While you can create grids and matrix and all that stuff is good for interactive and drilling into details and stuff like that and creating a good experience, if people need to see details, this is your key. Now, two big things you need to know. One, it's only available to premium per user or premium. So you have to have one of those. And if you're using premium per user, all your users who consume it will have to have premium per user. And then two, this is built on SSRS technology. So all of Paul Turley's old books that you were about to recycle or send off to like the bookstore to sell, they're all super valuable now on how you do all this stuff inside here. So head on over to your used bookstore, because I don't even think you can find them online. If Paul's online, put it in chat if you can buy your books now, but I don't know. I was looking for them, I couldn't find them. But you can look up old SSRS or books, and there's honestly, I think there's like 2 decades of materials on this stuff that can go into super details on it. So but take the time to learn it because Paginated Reports is different technology than Power BI. While it's very similar, it is different. You'll need to install the Power BI Report Builder, which is the experience that you use to build content out. Some big keys that this enables you to do, it allows you to build out a report off of that Power BI data set. But more importantly, it allows you to build a report that is detailed based that goes back to that source system. You will find that many times, especially if you have super high cardinality joins and tables. If you're talking 100 millions of records and you're drilling into details, it's exorbitantly difficult to get those into tabular models. Your models blow up, they underperform, and you have all sorts of issues. If instead of putting it in the tabular model and you leave it in the backend service, you leave it on that database, your Paginated report can go out, connect to that database, and you can build reports off of that. Okay, that allows you to keep your models small while keeping your data access huge. All right. So please do this. This also allows you to take advantage of that one big table strategy that I was talking about earlier, where you either have views that bring everything out together into one big table, or better yet, you load the tables in, you load the data into big tables that are set up like this. Now, you can leverage custom connectors that go back to various sources there. Do look at the possibility of having like a Power BI data set that's a direct query to those sources as an intermediary for sources that aren't naturally defined inside of Paginated Reports or in Report Builder. That is a technique to overcome a lot of challenges that people have inside the space. But do look at this as part of it, okay? Those are the first 2 parts when it comes to building our report. Then the next big thing is is integrating those two experiences together. So this is, frankly, this is the thing that I'm absolutely the most excited about. And that is an integrated Power BI experience with a Paginated Reports that's embedded inside of this. Thank you so much, Chris Finland, for your years of work on this. I began bugging him about this, I think 5 or 6 years ago, and to see that it's now finally available is just a godsend. Now you can have heavily formatted power or detailed reports that exist inside of your Power BI experience. Please note, you can either build it off the model. Again, you build it off the model inside there, or you build it with a drill through. This gives you infinite opportunities when it comes to interactions, driving insights, and doing all sorts of different things that you're allowed to do inside of the paginated report builder that you can't do inside of Power BI when it comes to programmatic differences. Does that increase your difficulty around like learning and doing more paginated reports? Yeah, but now you have options that you just didn't have before. So please check this out. Make sure that you get this in. But when it comes to publishing this out into the service, I'm going to show you what we do to publish stuff out. Now, you think to yourself, hey, Chris, super easy to publish. There's literally a button here. No, don't just hit that button. I want you to go in and I want you to grab a screenshot of your report. I want you to open up Paint. Paste it in. I want you to call it save as scatter 1, right? So then when I go out and I publish this out into the service, save it. I have to save. I choose what workspace I'm going to deploy this to. And I'm going to deploy this to my reports workspace because that's where all of my consumption goes through. I'm going to select that. Replace the report. As soon as this gets done, I'm going to go out to the service and I'm going to fire that up. It's going to open up. Here is my report. I'm going to go out and I'm going to, where is it? Settings. I'm going to put in a description of this report, what it's used by. I'm going to certify it. I'm going to feature on my homepage. I'm going to decide if I'm going to allow users to persist filters and whatnot. By default, it allows them to. I would recommend leaving the defaults on whenever and wherever possible, unless you have a specific user experience that you're cultivating. And then I want you to make sure that you go in and where'd it go? It's at the top, isn't it? It's at the top. You go in on the snapshot, you click on upload and you go to that PNG that you just took. You click select and you click save. What this will do is it'll make sure that this report, when users come into your homepage, that it's a featured report that's accessible to people and it shows up and they can see that report right on their homepage. This makes it very easy, especially in your organization. If you have hundreds and hundreds of sales reports, it can be really hard to remember which of the sales reports you're supposed to experience. But if you have a screenshot that that look and feel is going to be very specific to that report. So it really helps your users go in and access it. So once that's in place, then I want you to think about how are you, and remember, what was the first thing I said? It was start with the end in mind. Think about how people can go in and start to access this. Power BI is great, but also think about how you can embed this experience inside of a SharePoint site or inside a website or out on the web. If you publish this out on the web, please make sure that you're aware that you turn on all these things. People will generally have access to this stuff, but the experience is really the same, either on-prem or the web or published to web. You can embed this within websites, within work that you're doing. Do make sure that you put in a placeholder image. This is really important on websites because you might have websites that get lots and lots and lots and lots and lots of hits, but people may not always be clicking in on your reports and dashboards. Where'd it go? Oh, I pinned everything, but I didn't pin this one. For example, out on Kratos BI, I've got an embedded experience that I've got here. People can hit this all day long, and I know I'm not going to be dinged on my premium usage because I've got view interactive content. I've got these slides all over the place, so I'm not going to be maxing out my Power BI premium capacities when people are going in to use this. But this is a good way, even if it's in SharePoint, it's a good way to include your Power BI report, a little video, and that video can be on YouTube, that video can be on stream, wherever hosting source that you have for that content, as well as a write-up and additional documentation as to what is inside of that Power BI. So that as people come in and start to consume their reports, they understand what it's actually going to be done. So once you have all of this stuff together and you've mastered all of these things, then I want you to go out and I want you to start promoting these things, start to share with people. Build a blog, right? Go out to Kratos BI or create a blog that's out there, share with stuff. Create a YouTube channel that people can go to and start to learn how to work with. And oh, please don't talk. Share stuff out there. Go out to LinkedIn, go out to Twitter, start to publish this stuff out there. And once you start to find your flavor, find your niche inside this entire landscape, and you're sharing this stuff out there, I guarantee you, I'm on LinkedIn, I'm on Twitter every single day of the year. Go out there, start publishing it. I guarantee you, I'll see all of it. And you'll get a message from me saying, "Hey, I noticed your blog. I've noticed your live stream. I've noticed this or that. I would love to have you become a data god," and you'll get an invite that will come out. And if I miss someone, if there's someone who is not on Kratos BI's website that I'm completely missing, that if you go out here and look at all these data gods, there's someone that you don't see on this list that should be, send me an email, let me know. You'll make this stuff much more, or I'm happy to add people in. Okay, that was that's all the stuff I had. That's how you become a data god. You go through, you do all that stuff, you figure out your strategies, you get the stuff together. Oh, yeah, Christian, you've got a good point. Make sure you also have mobile stuff. I cut that out because mobile was a lot. But what questions do people have? That was how you can become a data god. I hope you found it useful. Thank you so much for joining in. If you do have questions, put them in the links down below. Like, subscribe, heck, turn on that alarm bell. Thank you very much. Peace.